Introducing an exciting new theory. One to shock the crowds. One to blow their minds clean out the water. One to reveal the truth about biology. Yes, today we shall bring to you the one and only greatest concept man hath ever thought of. From the mind of the great Charles Darwin himself, evolution! Evolution is not just a gradual metamorphosis from monkeys to human. No, boy. Evolution is much more. It is on a much larger scale than just a few years. Think about the millions, the billions. That's where it's at. You have alleles and genotypes and phenotypes all working together to create the perfect organism for an environment. The whole gist of evolution essentially revolves around the fact that better traits are passed down from one generation to another in a process called selection. But where do these better traits come from in the first place? How can you select better traits if there are none to begin with? Well, let us introduce you to the wonderful world of mutations.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
No, it's not that. Rather, it's simply a change in one's DNA due to chemical or physical changes. Rather than superpowers, you can get a slightly darker blotch of skin, increased appetite, ADHD, or a fish can be white instead of normally gray. Oftentimes, mutation can be detrimental, for example, cancer. But in a few rare cases, it provides genetic diversity needed for a population to survive a pandemic or hide from predators. One's general ability to survive in a specific environment is often called the relative fitness. Distinct species form when a population is fit enough in its environment to outcompete other less fit traits. This can happen in the form of ALLOPATRIC and Simpatric speciations. Let us begin with ALLOPATRIC speciation. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but imagine a population of goats distributed evenly on a huge grassland. Suddenly, a mountain range pops up, and there are now two populations of goats. Because of the rain shadow, one side turns into a swamp and the other side turns into a desert. Over time, the goats on the swampy side will be more adapted to swimming and the humidity, while the desert goats will be more adapted to thirst and walking on sand. Sympatric speciation occurs when a population of one species decides to say, well, there's not enough food here. There's a lot of food over there, but it's a different kind of food, so, you know what? Let's just change our physiological structures to, digest that food and we'll be all a-okay. And over the course of a few million years, that will be a new species. Yay, Simpatric speciation. Modeling populations is a necessary task for biologists interested in keeping track of genetic ratios. If, in a perfect world, where everything is exactly random and balanced, then we would use the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium equations, which is simply p squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1, where p and q represent the frequencies of a dominant and recessive allele, respectively. In this term, exactly random refers to a large breeding population that always chooses mates randomly, never mutates, and is never susceptible to natural selection. Of course, nothing ever functions like that, but the Hardy-Weinberg equation is simply used as a comparison to the real world, where there is artificial and natural preference over certain abilities and traits, where populations certainly migrate, where mutations occur randomly due to high energy rays from the sun, and where inbreeding is definitely a thing, not just with royal families. And finally, we have genetic drift, a topic that seems pretty complex, but it's basically where you have a population with two traits, and over time, it becomes one trait. The population literally shifts in favor of that one trait. Well, how does that happen? Let's suppose that there are 500 of trait 1 and 500 of trait 2. Somehow, through, let's say, a lightning strike, 100 members of trait 2 die. Simply by looking at the math, trait 1 has a distinct advantage for trait 2, and if trait 2 is really unlucky, they will die out over the course of the next million years. Yay, genetic drift.
What is the actual evidence there is to evolution? We demand proof. It's all a lie. It's big education trying to brainwash us all.
Wait, there is evidence, and I shall present it.
Oh yeah? Come at it then. Earth is flat and you know it.
Then we shall begin at the age of the dinosaurs. Using my magical power, I shall transport us to a place where we can see all of this. To the local sedimentary cliff face. What? I can't travel back in time. Fossils are the best evidence of evolution when it comes to large timescales, and this cliff provides stratified layers that can help determine the age of fossil samples relative to other fossils. It's common sense that where you have two fossil layers on top of each other, the bottom one is older than the other. When comparing two fossils from different eras next to each other, one can find many similar structures, like pronounced phalanges or finger bones, or tails and tail remnants. Homologous structures. The fact that all the same structures exist in the different fossils suggests that they all had a common ancestor.
Yeah, but why are there layers in the first place? Why do I see all these bugs and dinosaurs in my backyard?
You certainly must not forget that there are mass extinction events. An asteroid could hit, a supervolcano can erupt, and a large amount of everything can all die at once. Happy thought. But even with a tiny population, the animals that develop later on after the catastrophe can still show these homologous structures.
But how do you explain the same fossils being on the other side of the world? How were there tropical plants in friggin' Antarctica? Checkmate!
Well, the continents weren't always as they are now. Remember Pangaea, the huge supercontinent? Imagine a world where animals could freely travel between South America and Africa because they were literally attached. Evolution occurs during a long time, and over the course of a billion years, the continents moved apart and the animals developed separately, evolving into their new environment.
That's all fancy schmancy facts. Tell me this, nerd. How can this evolve into a cow?
Well, one important point to remember is that evolution isn't goal-oriented. Evolution is always happening. That cow you're seeing could be completely unrecognizable 100 million years from now. The trilobite had no intention of becoming a cow. If it even could become a cow. I would assume the cow is more related to a fish or a bony worm rather than a prehistoric lobster.
No, the facts. It's too much. I have been defeated.
Well, that is one more day saved from the looming specter of the uninformed. Yes?
Excuse me?
Yes?
How can we graph evolution?
Well, I guess it's time for me to come in then. There are two main ways to plot evolutionary timelines, a cladogram and a phylogenetic tree. Phylogenetic tree tries to show the overall evolution of things, typically based upon genetic relativity of organisms. It would make sense for members of similar groups, say all 6,000 plus species of lizard, to be placed next to each other. But remember, you can't tell time with phylogenetic trees. The most all-encompassing of trees would include three domains, Prokarya, Eukarya, and Archaea, which are the three main forms of life found on Earth. By looking at a phylogenetic tree, you can see where a common ancestor would fall in between two species, no matter how diverse. So on to cladograms. Cladograms are like phylogenetic trees, but they are based upon homologous structures rather than genetics. Cladograms show where a transition species would fall in between modern and even prehistoric samples. Let's take a helpful example. Right here we have a bunch of seemingly random animals, but let's try to organize them with these traits here. Which animals have a backbone? Actually, let me rephrase that question. Which ones do not have a backbone? As you can see, the lamprey does not have a backbone, and should be structurally farthest away from all the other organisms. Keep on organizing by traits and you'll have a complete cladogram.
Wow, thanks! Organizing fossils and fossil species will now be much easier. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for watching our video! Woo!